So I recently came across these guys whilst doing an essay on human dissection in Hellenistic Alexandria, and I needed a very gruesome example. Now, to be honest, the essay wasn't that good, but the gruesome example, now that was pretty excellent. Hello and welcome to another episode of Boring History. My name is Angela, and in today's episode we're going to be having a look at the Cirrus. Now quickly before we begin, if you're looking for the Cirrus story that links up with Odin and like the Vikings, then this is not the video for you. It's still a very interesting video, I promise, but I just don't want you to get all the way to the end and be disappointed. I have put the link to a website that talks about the Odin stuff down below, so at least if that is what you're looking for, you're not completely disappointed, but of course, please feel free to stick around and watch the rest of this video also. Okay, so let's continue. In very simplified terms, the Seres are a type of Germanic prophetess. However, the majority of information we have about them is thanks to Roman and Greek records. And the most important, or perhaps we should say the most extensive of these works are Book 4 and 5 by the Roman historian Tacitus. Tacitus? Doesn't matter. But his works were published around AD 105 to 108. Tacitus? Anyway, he tells us that one of the reasons the Germans respect their women so much is because... well, that. But let's see if I can remember this quote correctly. The Germans believe that inherent in women is a certain holiness and prophetic ability. And Tacitus actually gives us some examples of just how special and holy some of these German women can be. The first of these women is a lady by the name of Veleda, who lived during the reign of the Roman Emperor Vespasian, which was from around AD 69 to 79. We're told how Veleda was extremely highly regarded because she had predicted the victory of the Batavians against the Roman legions. And it appears as though even the Romans acknowledged the power of Veleda, because after their defeat, this legionary commander was sent to go and see her and give her like a present or something. Actually, the way it's worded, it's as if the commander himself was also being sent as a present. And I guess because she was single, maybe she would have appreciated a strong, strapping, young, hunky commander. But unfortunately, as if being defeated in battle wasn't bad enough for this commander, he ends up getting murdered on the way to Veleda and never ends up meeting her. And Tacitus actually also gives us a couple of other examples of how diplomatic gifts were being sent to this Veleda. Now, there have been a couple of analyses done on the Latin that is used by Tacitus in his accounts of Veleda. And there's discussions around if he's actually talking about Veleda having prophecies or more like something like female intuition. But seeing as I speak zero Latin, I'm not even going to try to explain any of that. Instead, let's move on to the earliest description of a Germanic Seeresses that we have. And also, can we just acknowledge that is a very difficult word to say? But anyway, this earliest description we have is thanks to this guy called Posidonius, who lived during like 135 to 51-ish BC. And we don't actually have his original description, but his account has been preserved for us by Strabo, who's that super famous Greek geographer. So this snippet talks about the Simbri, who are thought to have been this ancient Germanic tribe, although not a lot is known about them. And apparently, the Simbri had a very peculiar custom. When they went out on their expeditions, so like pillaging, raiding, maybe a spot of hunting, they were accompanied by their wives. Oh my god. And not only that, but their wives were attended to by these grey-haired soothsaying priestesses. And these grey-haired priestesses were dressed all in white with cloaks of linen and swords. Seeresses. But never mind all that, because whenever the Simbri had been successful in their raids and battles and they came back with some prisoners, the following would happen. The Cirrus, with their swords drawn, would go and see the prisoners. They would then select however many they wanted or needed and lead them back through the camp to a wooden platform. Once there, they would line the prisoners up. Then, a Cirrus would lead one of the prisoners up onto the wooden platform, and she would come to a stop right above a large bronze jar. The Cirrus would then take her knife and cut the throat of that prisoner and watched the way that his blood gushed into the bronze jar. And from the way the blood splattered and flowed and the little trails that it made down the bronze jar, the seeress would be able to make predictions. And don't worry, because once all the blood was drained, the corpse did not go to waste, because other seeress would then take the prisoner and slice him straight down the middle so they could examine his insides. Apparently, prisoner intestines could prophesy the victory of their army. Now tell me this isn't where the inspiration for all those fantasy warrior sorceresses has come from. But as cool as this little story is that's given to us by Strabo, I do need to mention that there's a tiny bit of debate, or perhaps I should say discussion, around the validity of this account. And a lot of this discussion again has to do with the wording of the ancient Greek that Strabo uses, and whether or not he's actually claiming that this is an eyewitness account from this Poseidonius guy. But again, I don't know ancient Greek, so I don't want to get into all of that, and to be honest, it's a good story, so let's just leave it at that. And actually, it's a good thing that we move on, because I have one more account of a seeress and who they are to share with you. And this account is given to us by none other than the great Julius Cesar himself in his commentaries of the Gallic campaigns. So, in 58 BC, Caesar's armies faced this guy who was known as the King of the Germans. And look, there's a whole backstory here, but to be honest, I'm not that interested in war and battles and alliances and politics and all that boring stuff. So please excuse me while I gloss over 90% of the details. But apparently, this Celtic tribe had asked these other dudes who were under the control or under the rule of the King of the Germans to come and be mercenaries for them. But when they arrived in this Celtic tribe's land, the King of the Germans and his men were like, do you know what? We kind of like it here. I think we might stay. So the Celtic tribe is all like, but this is our land. Yeah, this is not what we planned at all. You were supposed to be helping us fight our enemies, but now you're our enemy? So confusing. And the Celtic tribe go and ask Caesar for help. And Caesar and the Celtic tribe do end up going into talks, but they can't really come to an agreement, and then they also end up arguing. And Caesar and the Celtic tribe end up getting into a little tizzle. Then one evening, after another round of failed negotiations, Caesar goes to speak to some of the prisoners of war that they had captured from this Celtic tribe. And Caesar asks the prisoner, why is your leader putting up with all these negotiations? Why doesn't he attack us already? And after a bit of convincing, the prisoner tells Caesar that their seeress had done some hocus pocus stuff, and they divined that if they went into battle before the new moon, they would lose. Caesar's all like, interesting. And the next day he forces the Celtic tribe into battle and wins. Now apparently this story of the seeress is thought to be a little more plausible because it doesn't make sense that Caesar would have made up the story. Especially because there were eyewitnesses to the interrogation of the prisoner. So had Caesar lied, all these witnesses could have been like, that's not what happened at all. Now there are other references of the seeress made throughout ancient sources. For example, there's that time that Augustus's stepson, I think, doesn't heed the warning of a seeress and ends up getting injured and dies. But I'm actually going to end today's video here because I appreciate there's only so long you can listen to me talk. However, if you are interested in finding out more, I have referenced an excellent article down below which you can look up and have a read of yourself. I expect a full book report on my desk by Friday. But as always, thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you've enjoyed today's topic, and I hope you'll consider subscribing if you haven't already, because I look forward to sharing even more boring history with you in the future.